All right. So this week we're going to be covering the midterm project. There's an old video out here. I'm going to record this video here as well, so you guys get some ideas of what's going on. The idea behind the midterm project is you guys select what you want to do for the midterm project. All right. So there's no direction other than the rubric that's given there, which means if you have a project in mind, something you want to do, it's wide open as to what you go after. The goal is that you'll do this midterm project. You'll meet all the rubric requirements. Then I will give you feedback after you turn that in. Once you've turned that in, I give you feedback. Then you guys continue to work on that same project, fixing anything if it was broken for your final project. The final project has a few more rubric items on it, and then that's the end of the class. All right. There's still other stuff we'll cover, but that's the main big projects that you'll do in this class. So taking a look at the rubric, it's very, very simple. So the first 25 points are going to be covering whether or not your program executes with no errors, meaning I'm going to do everything I can to break your program. It should not break. All right. So if you're taking inputs and you're asking for age or you're asking for something else, it should check to make sure that it's getting a valid age. It should check to make sure it's getting numbers, that kind of stuff. If you say, give me an age, and I type in ASDF and it crashes to a red screen, boom, 25 points done. Okay. So give it to your brother, your sister, your roommate, anybody else to go through your program and intentionally try to break it. Make sense? At this point, you guys have all the tools you need in order to make sure anything that comes in is sanitized and running correctly. All right. When it gets to a red screen, you lose all 25 points. If it just has little errors in there, this section I also count off for spelling, grammar, punctuation. You're still in college, right? So the program should have accurate spelling, punctuation, grammar, that kind of stuff. Those would be in 5-point increments. So everything that's a thing off is just a 5-point increment. The second 25 points is, does the program solve something, solve a problem or create something new, AKA make it yours. All right. Don't go out on the internet, find a hangman game, recreate the hangman game that's on the internet. That's not yours. And it's also not original. And it's not something new. I've seen hundreds of them. So if you're going to do something like that, make sure it's yours. Make sure it's original. Do a new spin on it, some new flair on it, something. But it's much easier to either solve a problem with your daily life, right? What's the name of the book that we use in this class? Automate the boring stuff, right? So something boring in your life, figure out a way to use Python to make it better. All right. If you don't want to do that, then create some program from scratch, whether it's a text adventure game, etc. I'll show you some examples of what students have done in the past. All right. Right there is 50 points of your whole midterm. All right. Just make sure it don't break and make sure it's yours. Pretty simple. The next 25 points is making sure that you use good flow control, meaning that you use functions. You have to use functions in your program. You have to write functions in your program. Everybody understand that? All right. So you write functions, you use functions, and the code should be as clean as possible, meaning that you're writing the smallest amount of code necessary to complete that function. All right. Other than that, I look for example of either a list or a dictionary. Either one, but they got to be in there and they have to be used in an appropriate way. Don't just throw a list in there and say, yep, it's in there. It has to be used in some way. All right. The last 25 points, again, should be super simple. It's making sure your project is well documented, meaning at the top of the project, you should have your initial comments, AKA your name, assignment, what it is kind of thing. Directly below that, you'll have a block comment that has exactly what your project is. So tell me what your project is. Okay. I'll show you an example of a project here. So you'll have a block comment. You guys remember how to do block comments? What do you use?
Three single quotes.
Not 3 singles, but 3 doubles.
Those 3 doubles.
Yep. So triple double quotes. And then inside there, you can type in whatever you want, and that'll make your block comment. All right. You should also have line comments and such throughout the entire project. You don't have to go crazy, but I need to see some examples of you commenting through there. That's the full 100 points. So notice it doesn't tell you what to do. It doesn't tell you what you have to have in there. No for if statements and elifs and that is up to you as long as it meets these requirements. So the only one it requires is doing a list or a dictionary and the use of functions. Does that mean you can write a super simple project and get the full 100 points? Yes. Does that mean you are really, really not going to do so well in the final? Yes. Right? Give yourself enough substance to the project that you can actually expand it to the final. All right. If it's something super, super simple and it doesn't have a bunch of expandability, that's probably going to be some deduction in the second part, which means does it actually solve something or create something new? Like it needs to have some substance to the program. All right. There again, it's not 500 lines of code. It's not 2,000 lines of code. It's just give it some substance. Make sure that you can explain what's going on in here. That's the other part of this. Make sure you can explain your own code. If you use your friend ChatGPT or your neighbor or your comp sci buddy or whatever you're using, they're not going to be able to help you in the final one-on-one interview, right? So when I ask you about your code and have you explain your code and some other stuff during that final, if you can't explain it, you didn't write the code. It's as simple as that. And then it becomes a 0. Does everybody understand that part? So can you use them for help? Absolutely. But you better understand what they're doing and helping you with, right? So I don't care if you use ChatGPT to help you get through a stuck problem or something like that. That's fine. But make sure you can explain the code that comes out of it. Because why? I'm going to be looking for super advanced code. If I start seeing super advanced code in there, yet you couldn't pass the midterm exam telling me how to center the word student, it's probably not your code, right? Okay. So that is the rubric for this one. I will briefly show you the one for the midterm, or the final, so you can see what we're expanding up to. So the final, what will happen is you guys will get the final rubric back, or the final project back. Points, what you need to fix, all of that. You fix all that, then if you look here, it's the same rubric coming down, only now you have to add logging, which there will be a specific video on how to do this. If you don't watch the video, you just easily lost 20 points on your final. Like it's super, super simple that week when we get to that, okay? The last one is that you have to do object-oriented programming. So whether you convert your project over to that or you use third-party modules, we'll talk about that later. Otherwise, the rest of this project is identical to what you saw in the first one. Okay, so essentially, if you fix your midterm, if there was issues on it, there may not be any issues on it, add these other 2 pieces to it, you're done. Okay? Any questions on the midterm project? All right, so here's an example of one. See if I can find one here real quick.
Chances.
No, I wanted to show you one that worked.
His breaks.
Okay. So here's one and an example of how that would look. So at the top, you've got your initial comments up there. Now I replaced the name with student 1, right? Then you're going to have this block comment section here. Should be 3, not 4. There you go. And this is going to be an explanation of what this project is. So in this case, this is a midterm project. The code entails a text adventure game. You follow the tale of a boy named George who wakes up alone and appears in a cellar. In this cellar, there are numerous rooms. You maneuver your way through these moves and try to escape. It's very basic, but it's mostly just there to expand on for the final, right? So they're giving me some feedback as to what's going on. They give me some comments on how things work. Okay. And then they're writing the code that goes along with that. Now, in this case, they use functions to break up the program in a way that it made logical sense. So start U1 just means he's starting through his particular program. We scroll to the bottom. You can see starts with start X, right? So we go to start X. We can see that Jorge wakes up in a daze. We gather the user's input. Notice that in this case, he's sanitizing with making sure that it's not up or left or right. Then we're going to go ahead and accept these answers. And if those work, we're going to call another function from within here. All right. This isn't perfect in terms of examples of what code you would do. You don't really want to call other functions within functions because that can get really nasty. You should have a main program loop, aka this start X, should not be its own function. It should start down here at the bottom. All right. The idea is that everything has different sections for different pieces of the code. So if he's got a section that's broke, he knows exactly where to go look for his code. But at the end of the day, this is a simple text adventure game. Looks like this. So Jorge woke up in a daze. It's dark, barely gained consciousness. Where am I? You read the text. If I type in anything other than up, down, or up, left, right, one, I should be getting an error back from this. Okay, so notice it just reprompts me. I should present the user with an error that comes through here. That's not valid input or something like that, right? But if I do up, then I can see that I'm in the next room. Again, needs to give me some kind of feedback on input. Yes. And then would we like to try again? Yes. Up. And if I say yes here, I blow up and die. Okay. So that's the end of that section. If I say no, then the program ends and it does. Well, no, because I just picked the wrong path, right? So if I actually pick the right path, it's much longer. So if I go up and I say no, and then what do I need to do? This time I'm going to fight. Scroll here, move my text a little bit. We can see I need to go now to the right, and then he's going to use a sword, and I die. So it's a text adventure game. You're going to be working your way through, but there's one path that gets you to the final game if you're doing a text adventure game. All right. These are probably some of the most common. Notice it just blops the text on the screen. You could do the cool little text writer where it's slow. I encourage you guys to use things like ASCII art. So he's talking about having a flamethrower and a sword and all that, right? If you go out here and do a Google search for ASCII art, this is the main archive that works pretty well. So from here, say we needed a sword of some sort, right? So we go down to weapons. Let's close out that. Let's look at now. Oh, there's swords. Let's go back to swords. Okay, so you can tell that this is just ASCII art. In other words, it's just characters that make it look like a sword. So what you can do is you can highlight this entire sword out like that, hit Control-C to copy it. You go into your program, and we could have a function here like print sword. So def print sword, right? And then we say sword equals, and then we're going to have our triple single quotes. Hit enter, paste in the sword. Go down to this line like this. Okay. And we do our triple single quotes like that. And then we just simply do print sword. So the triple is because I have multiple lines, right? When I copy and paste that in, there's multiple lines of code. So this one is a dot with a bunch of underscores, and then we got a pipe symbol and some other dots. I need to paste that all in at once. If I just do a single quote, it's going to just do one line of code across the screen. Yep, the website is called ASCIIart.eu. And if you just do a Google search for ASCII art, you're going to find it. There's a ton out there. So by doing this, what happens now is if I go to this main program and I look at Start X, but before I do the Start X adventure here, I simply come in and say print sword. And so now if I rerun his game, I get a nice little sword that pops up at the top. All right. It's simple, but it gives more depth to the game that's going on. So what else am I missing in this game? Some kind of title, right? It'd be nice to know what this is. So we need to come up with a title. Well, again, I can paste out simple text on the screen. That's boring. So if you come out here and you do a Google search instead of ASCII art, you say ASCII text generator. You come out here, real simple one, use it all the time. And instead of type something here, you can type in Knight's Adventure. Right? And so now you get some little graffiti art here. Instead of graffiti, maybe I want to use Doom's font, something like that, or Twisted. That's a little hard to read. There you go. So there's like Knight's Adventure, right? And I can change my width. If it's too big, I can smush it a little bit together. change my height to smush down a little bit. Let's do full. Nope, fitted. Nope. And if you want to see all these, you can just hit test all, and it'll give you a way to look through Knight's Adventure till you find one that you like. So maybe you like something like this one, right? You select and copy, and then all you have to do is come back into your program. And before we do the sword, we're going to have something like title equals 3 of those, paste it, enter, 1, 2, 3. And then when we do the print sword, this time we're going to print title in front of it. And now all we have to do is run this program. We can see Knight's Adventure. Now, obviously, that was too big in text, right? You would want to go find a way to shrink that down a little bit. But the idea is that now you have a title and you have a sword, and it gives a little more fun to your game as you're going through. All right. If you're doing text adventures, these are the nice ways to do that kind of stuff. And then, like we showed you before, you could put all your text into a list and then do a for loop so that it prints each line, and you could do time.sleep to give it a little bit of a delay. And then if you want to do each character at a time, well, then you do a for loop of the line and you print each character at a time with a delay in there. Okay. If you guys are interested in doing that for your text adventure, fine. Here's the thing that's unwritten in the midterm projects: time management. You don't know it, but that's really what this project's all about. Get all your grandiose ideas today. You still have to accomplish this in less than 2 weeks, right? So don't do too big of a project. Do something that you can accomplish. If you get to a part where it's a new feature that didn't quite work, just comment it out in the code. Don't delete it. Comment it out and say, I'm working on this piece of code to implement in the final. So in your midterm, at the very end of your midterm, tell me what you plan to do with your final so that I can give you some clues as to what you should do for object-oriented programming or how to fix something, that kind of stuff. All right. Just comment out that whole section. Does anybody know how to come out a whole section of code? Triple double quote it, right? Just turns into a massive comment. In terms of substance, there again, it's usually you did get to all of it in your midterm and there's some things you wanted to add, but it's converting your project over from a standard script over to object-oriented. And again, that'll make more sense when we cover object-oriented stuff. That's usually the hardest part, is converting that over. If you use lists and dictionaries appropriately in your text adventure game. So what would we use a list or a dictionary for in a text adventure game? Anybody know? List out options. So a list of choices that they could do. That's one option. Where else would we use a list or a dictionary? You guys have played RPG style games. Item list, right? So the idea is your inventory. So you're building an inventory as you go through the map, or add a sword, or you picked up fireballs, or whatever you're doing. You add that to your inventory. That is something we can convert over to object-oriented at the end. Put it in a list, put it in a dictionary for now. We'll convert it over to an object at the end. If you're picking different characters in your project, those we can convert to objects in the final. Okay. Now, you can do something completely non-text adventure related, right? So you may have some networking students in here that want to build a script that programs routers or switches. Great. Or you're on a softball team and you want to build out a roster application to pick out who's going to be team captains and who's going to what positions. It doesn't matter what the project is. It's just a way for you to showcase a working knowledge of what you've learned so far, right? I encourage you to pick something that you're interested in. What's your favorite movie, your favorite book, something that you know a lot of knowledge about, so you're not having to do a bunch of research in order to accomplish the project. Does that make sense? So if you pick your favorite game, favorite movie, and base your stuff off that, great. You already know how the game or movie works. Just apply the code, the logic behind the thing to display what you want to do. I've had students build keyboards out of Python. I've had light shows. I've had text adventure games. I've had full-on GUI platform gamer codes using Pygame. It's a wide range of what you can do for the midterm project. The goal, for those of you that even go way over the top and super advanced, don't forget the rubric, right? I have some students that are way beyond what they need to be for introductory to Python, but they forget to read the rubric and match the rubric. All right. If you don't have a thing picked out by Thursday, I would be emailing me soon. All right. You don't want to waste a whole week by trying to figure out what your project is. So if you need an idea or just can't come up with something by Thursday, come find me so we can get you on the right track. That way you have a full week to work on it. All right. This isn't due until 22nd of October. So you've got some time before it comes through. Okay. Anybody got any questions on that? And I may potentially even extend that deadline because the week of the 23rd there, I'm out in DC. So if I am not around or got to leave early or something like that, I may extend that deadline. But plan on having it done October 22nd. Anybody got any other questions on the midterm and how it works? All right. If you remember from the syllabus, which I know most of you just memorized because that's what you love to do in classes. Here's the weight of your assignments, right? So you'll have a total of 3 homework assignments. That's 15%. Those quizzes you've done, there's 3 of those, there's 20%. This midterm project is 20% of your grade. That midterm exam was 25 and your final project is 20%. So this project that you're setting up is in the end worth 40% of your grade. Way more than the homework assignments you've done so far. So spend some time on the midterm project, work with some friends, come up with some ideas. Totally fine. Yeah.
So we will not have an actual final exam.
That's correct. There's no finals in this class, just the final project. When we meet one-on-one during the final exam or the final project portion of it, I will ask you questions, which serves as a final exam in the class. There's no set questions or anything like that. It's just me asking you about your code, which is better than you guys taking a multiple choice exam, I would imagine. At that point, you should be pretty familiar with your code, so it's much easier to answer questions on your code than it is to take a rough midterm exam again. I plan to grade those midterm exams here this week. So again, you'll get an email when it says everything's fine. That should be done by Thursday. Yeah.
We're able to ask for help.
Absolutely. So that's the next point is from here on out for until, what is it? October 24th. We will not have class in here until October 24th. That'll be the next time we meet. All right. So use that time that you would have in class here on the 12th, 17th, 19th to work on that midterm project. I will be around during that time, so you're welcome to come ask me questions. I'm not going anywhere during that time. But if you want to just stay in your room that day and start coding away on it, whatever you do, do not wait till that last minute. Trust me, it will not work out for you. Use the time. If you want to show up here and just code away, so be it. That's perfectly fine. And I'll be in my office if you have questions. Same way with you guys that are online. We won't be meeting until the 24th again. So use that time to work on your stuff. If you have questions, email me. And be persistent with your emails, meaning put the name of the class you're in. And if I don't answer in 24 hours, send me another email. That's not offensive to me. I am extremely busy. Most of you guys have figured that out already. So emailing me over and over, that does not affect me. That just means I need to get to you. Now that things are starting to slow down in the semester, I'm more attentive to my email than I usually am. But as you guys have known, the last 6 weeks are just nuts. So. Yeah. Yep. Travel, trying to get everybody together, that kind of stuff. So. All right. Anybody online? Do you guys have any questions? All right. Above all, have fun with it. If you're not having fun with it, it's going to seem like the most giant chore and you're not going to understand it. But if you pick a topic or some subject or whatever you're doing that you actually have fun with, then it's not so much of a struggle. And I've had a range of students in here. I've had 18, 19-year-olds to 65-year-olds. The 65-year-old talked about knitting and she built an app to talk about the threads that she would use and things like perfect. As long as it displays your skills in Python and it's a subject you're familiar with, she had no trouble coding at 65 years old, having no idea what Python was when she came in. All right. I have plenty of foreign exchange students that can't even speak English that can code in this kind of stuff just fine because they pick a topic that's familiar with them. But make sure in your product and your end product things I see, spelling, grammar, punctuation, etc., that all has to be there. So put uppercase letters on sentences and all that kind of stuff. That should be in there. Otherwise, I got to make you guys write an APA paper. You guys want to do that instead? I didn't think so. I figured just putting the correct text in a project works a whole lot easier that way. All right, that's all I got. I'll stop the recording.